I had 12:30 as my go live time, and it's possible that announcements went out as though this was a noon event. So I'm just checking. All right. How is everybody today? Today we're going to be talking about fundraising related things. Great. Email went out as 12:30, but somehow the event got set to 12. Not a problem. I mean, we just got to go with the flow. I am here off my usual desk getting ready to go to a big sailing regatta. So I'm going to be off the rest of this week, although for those of you on my Inspired Nonprofit Leadership Tips mailing list, you will still get a tip this week on Thursday. But let's jump right in. Today I want to talk about keeping up with donor follow-up. I hear this a lot. I hear folks saying, well, it's just really hard to keep up. And if you suggest, hey, send a weekly email, people kind of freak out a little like, oh my God, how am I supposed to send a weekly email? How am I supposed to do everything else and call my donors and meet with them and stuff like that? So today I want to talk about the importance of consistent donor follow-up, consistent and frequent donor follow-up. And I don't even want to call it follow-up. We'll talk about that. Some reasons why you might consider adding staff to help with that. And also how to make it a bit easier so that it doesn't take up so much time. Wow, that's a lot for 5 minutes. So let me dive right in. First of all, we have a relationship with our donors, right? And you don't want to be, so just think of them as, right, your friends, your colleagues. You don't want to be that person who only reaches out when you need something or is very inconsistent. And honestly, if you're going to be, have a close relationship with your supporters, you want to have regular contact so that you are top of mind. I'll never forget the results of a marketing study I once heard that said the number one reason why people switch from one product to another is indifference. Indifference. It just felt like trying something new. And the way to battle that is through regular communication. Make people feel that bond and reinvigorate that bond and grow that bond they have with you. And that is why we need consistent, meaningful donor communication. All right, let's talk about why you might actually increase your capacity to do this by increasing staff. There is a really direct return on investment, right? If you absolutely need more staff in order to maintain communications, you will get your money back because there is money that is going to come in from maintaining that relationship. A ton of that is where there's a lot of return on investment. But don't necessarily jump to, oh, I need to hire, more development staff. Sometimes we need to think about reshifting ourselves. So you might actually need the executive director to be able to spend more time talking with donors. So how do we do that? We need to think about what hire can we make to give the executive director support in other areas that then help the executive director reach out to and talk to donors more. So maybe you have an executive director who's also leading programming and you need to hire someone to take over that program lead. Maybe you have an executive director who's trying to get everything done without an executive assistant. So maybe you need to actually hire an executive assistant. I see this one a lot, and that will free up some time, right? So think about how can you give your high-level team members more support so that they can spend their time doing really valuable activities like communication. So absolutely don't shy away from staffing up in a way that gets you more valuable time communicating with your donors because it's going to pay off many times over. All right, let's talk about how to actually make that communication happen. Without, I think a lot of people overthink consistent donor communication. They think, oh, well, you're saying to email every week. I need like a fancy newsletter and produce graphics and have photos. You don't need that. I'll tell you what you can do instead. Um, so you might think I need a fancy direct mail campaign. And these things, not to knock these things have a time of place. But if you're not at the basic point of having consistent donor communication, you're not ready for the icing on the cake. You don't necessarily need something fancy. You don't need to always have news to share, or good news. Certainly sharing good news is great. Sharing bad news works too. And just sharing the no news, right? No news is good news. Here we are just doing the work day in and day out. And we wanted to give you an update. Um, Okay, so let's talk about simple ways of staying engaged with your donors. So, email is definitely should be on your list, and you should be sending personal style emails as well as personal emails. So, give you an example. In the Thrive program, I recently coached a client. I said, "You're just going to send a weekly update from the desk of the executive director saying how things were going, and it's just like a plain Jane email." You'll send that email to your entire email list, but then for your high touch donors, you'll send a one-on-one follow-up from your regular email account. So like the blast version went out through whatever tool you're using to send emails to your entire list, and then from your individual email account, either from the same executive director, or if you have a development staff person, can follow up individually and say, hey, Barbara, or whatever the donor's name is, I wanted to make sure you saw this week's, update from our executive director. It has some blah, blah that you might be interested in. And, I'm happy to check in anytime if you want to hop on a call. Right? So that's how you do the follow-up to the email blast. And again, simple, plain looking email. Also, don't knock, having Zoom calls. You can certainly have coffee chats, but Zoom calls are very powerful. And you can do these individually with folks, but you can also host small group Zoom calls for a chance for your donors to ask you questions, hear some updates, hear some stories, and get to know each other. Let them know that they're part of something bigger, and it doesn't have to be a fancy, big event. All right, last thing I want to cover is how do you get this content? And I have a hack for you that it's not just a hack, it's really one of the best ways you can do it. So, hopefully, you're having a weekly staff meeting. If you are not, we need to talk. And at this staff meeting, ideally, you are sharing some headlines from the week. So, like some big newsworthy items that happened within your organization, like you got a big donation, or you had a huge success with a client, or you've lost a grant, or you're worried about something. Think about it not as announcements, but as news about what's going on in your nonprofit. And then the other thing you should be doing in your staff meeting each week is bringing up issues, things that need solving as a group that are coming up for people. These could be roadblocks, these could be tactical issues about how you are trying to do something, or they could even be strategic issues, meaning, you're realizing that a goal that you've been working on isn't quite framed up correctly. Okay, so we'll talk about staff meetings maybe another time. Definitely book a call with me if you're not having weekly staff meetings, or if you don't love your weekly staff meetings or your staff meetings in general. You can do that at pivotground.com/application. But let's assume you're having a staff meeting every week and you're getting information about the key things that are going on, good and bad, in your organization, and kind of the issues that you're aware of for the future. One person, whoever is going to draft the weekly email, is going to take basically what happened in that meeting, not all of it, and just provide a little update for the outside folks, right? Like, here's some wins from our week. Here's some, a high and a low is a great format, right? Here's a couple, you don't have to think of it always as a win. Like, here's some highs from our week. Here's some low points from our week. Here's what's on our radar for the future. And that's it, right? And then in the signature, you can have, like a PS about 3 ways that folks can support you. And what I want you to think about is you're updating your donors in a way that just brings them on the journey, right? And in many ways, your staff are your donors too, right? Because raise your hand if you have underpaid staff, then you have staff donors, right? They are donating their time. They are donating part of their rate to you. And they are committed. They do that because they're so closely attached to the journey. They know how important it is. But your outside donors, they don't know that if you don't bring them along the journey, right? So this kind of weekly email cadence is just about sharing the journey, the highs and the lows, what's coming, what got completed. It's as simple as that. And again, it shouldn't be a fancy formatted email. Just, type it up as though you're writing to a colleague about how things are going at your organization, and send it off to your list. So that's how you can master weekly communications with your larger constituent support base. And after you've made that a regular habit, let me know. We can talk about more ways that you can do communications, but that is going to take you a very long way. Until next time, all the best.